How's it going, guys, and welcome to hopefully a new edition of my video game videos. This one I'm going to be calling it, however the title is pending, but for right now I am calling it Voice of Reasons Versus, where I take two or more video games of the same caliber, where there'd be the same gameplay, the same story, or whatever you have, and pin those two or more games together and make them battle it out to see who truly is the superior video game. And in this edition of Voice of Reasons Versus, I'm going to be taking Activision's action-packed video game Prototype and putting it up against Sucker Punch's surprise summer hit, inFamous. Now, I have taken the liberty and divided up the scoreboard into 6 different categories that I think both of these video games can relate to, especially when both of the games are open world. Furthermore, each game will be graded in each category from a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being bad and 5 being the best. So with all that good stuff out of the way, let's go on to our first battle, the protagonist. Now in Prototype, the protagonist of the story is named Alex Mercer, who has enemy-absorbing and shape-shifting powers. He can also take memories, experiences, biomass, and even physical forms of the enemies through a skill called absorption. Alex can also shapeshift into more specialized form for attack, defense, or sensory enhancements. Furthermore, throughout the story, you come to realize that Alex Mercer is somewhat of an extrovert type of person, which means he likes to say what he wants to say without keeping to himself. And is it just me, or does Alex Mercer look a lot like Altair from Assassin's Creed? Now in inFamous, the player controls the protagonist named Cole McGrath, a bike messenger caught up in the epicenter of an explosion that devastates several city blocks of the fictional Empire City. The explosion sends the city into total chaos, while Cole, however, finds himself with the new electricity-based superpowers. Now, in comparison to Alex Mercer, Cole is somewhat of an introvert, which means he does like to keep to himself, especially during those karma moment decisions throughout the game, and him thinking about whether to do the good thing or the bad thing. Now, sadly, this is probably Cole's weakness in terms of which protagonist is the best, because throughout the whole entire game, you do learn that Cole is practically a pawn throughout the whole entire game, and it's pretty much, I know for a fact that Alex Mercer wouldn't take no crap from anyone and would totally destroy anyone in his way. And with that being said, Prototype takes a first lead in the category of protagonist with the 4, and inFamous shortly following with the 3. Next battle is on the story. Okay, I won't lie to you guys, I won't BS y'all. These two stories of Prototype as well as inFamous are very similar to one another. Each of them takes place in a huge city, and each has events that happened prior, and now you're working your way out afterwards and trying to find what exactly did happen to the city, as well as how did you become to get these powers. Now with that being said, you guys are probably wondering, well, if they're the same, you know, does that mean both of them win the story category? Well, not exactly. You see, one of the main things that kept me coming back to inFamous was the fact that you can play it all good or all evil. And what's surprisingly that I found is that there is so much more stuff when you do either one of them. Like there's a couple of characters that you won't see in evil mode, but you will see them if you did it all in good mode. So with inFamous, pretty much you're getting 2 stories for the price of 1, and compare that to Prototype, which is just one linear story. You know, there's no other alternative endings, alternative storylines. It does fall short in terms of story when compared to inFamous. So with that being said, in this round of story mode, I'm giving inFamous a 4 and Prototype a mere 3. Now let's battle for graphics. The visuals in Prototype are on par with next-gen graphics. The character models are very well done. The colors very vibrant, especially the gore in Prototype. But when you compare it to a game like inFamous, and when you see inFamous in terms of the visuals, the word that pops to mind is polish. The inFamous is a very well polished game. The graphics, the sparks of the electricity powers, everything about the visuals of inFamous is just nicely done. It just is so pretty to look at. Now don't get me wrong, both video games look great, but for the sake of this Voice of Reasons Versus episode, I'm going to have to give inFamous a 4 and Prototype a 3. Now, after 3 grueling battles, inFamous has taken a 1-point lead with a total of 11, while Prototype is hanging in there with a total of 10. Next is superpowers. Now, as mentioned earlier, in Prototype, Alex Mercer does have the skills to absorb enemies' identity, memories, as well as skills, and he also has the ability to shapeshift into various forms of defense or offensive attacks. Now, what's even cooler about this is the upgradable system of each and every skill. Now, while playing, I was very surprised, and I'm still surprised on how deep this upgradable system actually is, and it actually makes the game have at least some replayability. Now, in inFamous, Cole only has powers that are based on electricity. Now, this may seem like, oh, it's only based on electricity. I mean, there's not that many power moves that you can actually make out of electricity, but you'd be surprised on actually how creative the developers were in terms of creating new superpowers that were only based on electricity. Now, however, there is an upgrading system, but it's not as deep as Prototypes. But it did leave me somewhat, wanting more. Whereas, with Prototype, you got the whole shebang, you got blood, you got over-the-top superpowers, and they just crush the superpowers in inFamous. I mean, don't get me wrong, inFamous superpowers are awesome and just great to watch as well, but I just think Prototype superpowers are just way more cooler and way more devastating. So after the superpowers round, Prototype gets a 5 and inFamous gets a 3. Next up is round 5, which is on open world. Now, both games do offer a huge world. Prototype offers a huge world of Manhattan Island, where you can travel via a helicopter, gliding, or just the old-fashioned way of just running around, going from location to location. And of course, you have pedestrians walking around, and if they're not regular pedestrians, they're the pedestrians that are actually infected and trying to kill you. And in inFamous, you have 3 islands that consist of Empire City. Now, what it comes down to is the quality of the city. The quality in terms of the people who live in it. A lot of the developers today who make open world games tend to forget that the city is actually a character within the game, and it actually makes the game either a good one or a bad one. And this is where inFamous excels in. I just felt that in inFamous City, you have people who are looking for help and people who are doing bad things. And for some weird reason, you start to feel for the city, whether it be good or bad. I mean, you also even have sub-characters that you never see, but they're the sub-characters that talks for the city and to the city. The guy is, ironically, his name is Voice of Survival. And I just think it's a really nice feature and a really nice component that makes the city of Empire City and inFamous come so alive. Now, in opposite, in Prototype, you get the feeling of people just wandering around trying to kill you or trying not to be killed by the enemies. The city is more of a buffer from one point to the next, and I just never really got into the city at all in terms of Prototype. So with all that being said, I'm going to award inFamous with a 4 on open world, while I award Prototype a measly 2. I mean, you've got to have substance, quality over quantity, guys. For the last battle, we have side missions. It's interesting, both games do have side missions, but both games also took a different approach on how to do side missions. Prototype took the approach of, you do side missions to build up skill and nothing else. Like you see here, all I have to do is go past these green balls as fast as I can within the designated time, and the better the time, the better skill points I receive and whatnot. And personally, I think the side missions could be a whole lot better. Now with inFamous, they did take a similar approach, but they took it a step further. Not only do you gain experience points for each side mission, but you also make the city overall a better place to live for the people. And I just think that type of side missions where not only do you gain experience, but you also help better the city is a better experience overall. And that just goes back to the whole open world topic where the city is actually a character. So in terms of side missions, I'm giving inFamous a 4 and Prototype a 3. And after 6 grueling battles between inFamous and Prototype, the winner of this edition of Voice of Reason's Versus is, drumroll please, Sucker Punch's summer hit inFamous with a total score of 22, while Prototype trails by the score of 20. Now don't let the score discourage you guys. Both of these games are still great action-packed games, and when you think about it, they're pretty much equivalent to summer hit action movies. They don't really have that much plot, not that much story, but they're just fun to watch, and these games are just that. They're fun summer action games. And if you guys want a more detailed review on either of the games, be sure to check them out on my YouTube channel. Till next time guys, take care. How's it going, fellow gamers and friends? Voice of Reason here again. Say, if you guys liked the video you just saw, be sure to check out my other videos that I have located on my YouTube channel. And while you're at it, if you haven't done so already that is, be sure to subscribe. Oh, and one more thing. I'm also happy to announce that I finally have my own Twitter account. So if you guys want to know the latest reviews, previews, or even some special projects that I'm working on, be sure to follow me. Till next time guys, take care.